Welcome to another episode of Behind the Now. Today I get to chat with comic, comedy coach, and writer Susanna Spies. As a stand-up, Susanna has made audiences laugh across the nation at the Improv, Laugh Factory, Comedy Union, the Comedy Store, Broadway Comedy Club, New York Comedy Club, and other prominent venues. Named by Variety as one of the nation's top 10 for innovative approaches to learning, Susanna is also the president and founder of the Comedy Playground and the Humor Activists. Listen in to get a glimpse of how Susanna sees the beauty of life through comedy-colored glasses and learn more about the craft of comedy. Hi, Susanna. Thank you so much for doing this with me today. I'm so excited to talk with you.
Likewise. I'm super, super excited, and I'm even shocked because I was able to figure out technologically how to get to you. So thank God for that.
Yeah, awesome. I know that's actually that's a great start. Yeah,
we're off to a good start. I figured it out off my phone. We're going to the races. We're good.
Perfect. I'm so excited. So, Susanna, you are a comic, comedy writer, comedy coach, and I know just extremely creative and talented in general. So, talk to me. Where did this come from? How did you get into entertainment, into comedy, into all of it? Yeah, take it from there.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, I'm so grateful to be here. And I think I like anything, we all love laughter. And so I think at the end of the day, I would say I wanted to find ways to enhance that opportunity. And I was actually very shy when I was younger. I was creating characters all the time in my room. I had a fairly strict upbringing when I was pretty young. So I was always trying to create something as a form of my outlet, which so many of us artists do. And I was sort of characters was always my go-to. And so like Carol Burnett, obviously she still is a giant icon and legend that I just revere. But I found myself creating characters out of even like utensils at home or anything that my stuffed animals, and that just started perpetuating my desire to create characters and working around comedy in that capacity. And then I really dove into acting and comedy in college. And that was back in 1834. Just kidding. It was a while ago. But so I started comedy from a young age, knowing I love to develop characters and voices, very much like so many of us that get into it. And then I started professionally doing comedy when I came to LA. And that was a long time ago. It was in 98, 97. But I was doing comedy and doing some sketch sort of comedy and improv up in San Francisco where I lived before that. So it's kind of always been with me, I think, as far as my desire to always work around humor and laughter, as we all kind of love to do. But I started diving into it on a professional level from kind of the late 90s up until now.
Okay, amazing. So where did you grow up? In San Francisco?
No, I grew up in New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Yeah. Can't you hear my accent? If I talk to you like this, you could hear it.
Yeah, you got it.
So I had some pizza and, we were talking to each other. No, I grew up in New Jersey, but I left at 17. So really I was there. Actually, I've been in California longer than I was there, but I grew up there in Princeton, and then kind of kept heading west. I do make spurts back in New York as well. And I love New York, but I've been on the West Coast for the majority of a little over about 24 years. So
amazing. So did you study something relevant in college by chance?
Yeah. So I was, I was an English major. So I was sort of like always doing the route that was going to be a little bit safer than what we do as actors and artists coming out there and taking the leap. But as we all are, I was bitten by the bug, right? So it's like the moment I was doing a lot of student film work in college and kind of got a taste for drama. Was not technically a major, but it was almost a minor because I was doing so many different acting classes in addition to being an English major. But it was then that I started, kind of getting more involved in theater and production and working within improv groups and then acting groups and then having an agency in Denver, and it started peaking in a little bit more of an interest level. And then after that is in San Francisco is when I started pursuing it professionally. So,
Okay, amazing.
yeah.
I also have always loved English. That was like my main thing, like essays and books and everything. Yes.
Well, it's like we can't, it goes without saying, if you can write, it always starts with writing. Anything we do in terms of
Interesting.
what we pursue, if you can get thought to paper, or now I guess thought to computer keys, although I'm still a big fan of actually writing. I'm probably one of the
Yes.
few people I've like stacks of notebooks and lists everywhere.
Yes. Actually, I have a lot of notebooks too.
Right? I think
Yeah.
it's old school, but I think there's something to be said. I've always said it's a good muscle to have thought to paper. It changes direction when it goes thought to keys.
Right.
There's a non-filter that goes, I think, to paper, just like books.
Yeah.
Changing being on the electronics. I sound like I'm 90, but I do believe.
No, it's actually very true. It's interesting because, like when you're typing, there's something about it where like immediately you can edit it and like rethink it.
Yeah.
And on paper, it's there, and it takes a lot more consideration to cross something out, and it's like still there. You know what I mean? It's different.
An exercise that I know many people have done, and I know it's either in the artist way, or it's certainly, I know it's a well-known exercise, is to just set a timer and just write. Write. Don't let your pen leave the paper. I think we want to automatically go into editing when we have the opportunity to stop typing. There's that pause can be an interruption to any kind of flow. But I think it's everybody's process is uniquely their own. But I am an old school. I like that kind of old fashioned route. It's helpful.
I love that. I really love that.
Me too.
Amazing. So like, what is your comedy process like? I know it must have I'm sure it's evolved so much, but if you can speak to that at all, so do you start with writing? So let's say specifically for stand up. Yes, because I know I've worked at a comedy club before. I've seen a lot of stand-ups come and do different material, do the same material, and you see how every night it lands differently, or some parts are funny suddenly and some parts that were funny aren't anymore. And it's crazy. So speak to that, and then speak about your process, and then maybe how you could teach that. Because I know you teach as well. So your approach to teaching it.
Well, it's a great question. I mean, I think I as a comic, I always feel like I can teach comedy because I'm a comic. So I understand it. It's almost like if you're an actor, if you have a DP that's done scene work before, they're going to understand that angle of the camera. So I understand kind of how to structure and deliver things based on the perspective that I'm a performer. So my process changes. I mean, I think, we can all get in ruts. We can kind of you're not feeling motivated. And there's nothing worse than we want to try to push through that motivation somehow. The trouble doing that in a way that doesn't feel forced is that you lose authenticity when you do that. Right. So I'm a big proponent and advocate for doing things that you naturally would do. And that helps encourage and declutter whatever it is that may be blocking you. So in other words, if you go for your walk or your run, do it. And just while you're in action, sometimes by being a little bit more perceptive about your surroundings, materials around us all the time. So as far as what my process is, I just try to really tune into whatever is going on around me. If I'm not really doing a lot around me, then those opportunities can get smaller. But then you can build comedy even around things that are just in monotony, in things that are really mundane. Right. So it's just being very tuned in through your perceptions of what's going on around you. And I think when you do that, you're in process all the time. So, there's an old saying that says, ride the rut. So if you're feeling like you're in a rut, people, I think, we want to be hard on ourselves. I'm in this rut. I should. Should's always a bad word, I think, because
I agree. I say that
right? We do that.
Yeah.
We feel like, we should be doing this, but what's should according to who,
Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm a big believer in embrace the rut. If you feel like you don't want to do anything for a little bit, really commit to not doing anything. That sounds strange. But when you commit to that, there's going to be an outcome that you might be surprised by. Yeah. Because you're at least in truth when you're doing it. right?
Yes. I agree
And then as
completely.
far as like how I teach it, I have a really specific curriculum I've been
Hmm.
developing for so many years that I'm proud of because it's very user friendly. So
Yeah.
I've worked with a spectrum of ages from age 10 to 103 around this
Mm.
curriculum. So it's not like it's brain surgery, but what I'm proud of is that it's been applicable to everybody. So like I work with,
Yeah.
teens. I have a company called Comedy Playground and they've learned it. And then that's applied to my adult sessions and coachings and corporate companies that I work with, because across the board, it's really just basically taking what's going on in your life and expressing it in a way that can be understood by others through life's commonalities, through
Yeah.
experiences that you've had. But the uniqueness with stand up, as we know, is that everybody's story is different.
Hmm.
And so it's really the process around giving you the freedom to share the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then helping you write it in a way that can be comedic. So it's really
Yeah.
that's the part that teaches the comedy component. Because not all of
Yeah.
our lives are funny. Sometimes the
Yeah.
shit is where the funny is, right? So,
Yeah.
and then the curriculum comes in and kind of teaching that structure component, which is
Right.
what you learn in my class.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to highlight, because I really think it's powerful what you said, and I love that, is like, yes, we sometimes feel like these ruts or like, and it could be like moments of it or it could be days, Um, but it's so true. Like it's so powerful that if you accept whatever it is in the present and commit, like exactly what you said, like if you feel like nothing's working, just stop trying. And then the second that's why like we get these moments of inspiration, like what you were saying, like exactly like on a walk, in the shower. It's like when you're distracted, like when you're driving, suddenly you're like, oh, I got it, and you like
Yep.
have to quickly get it down before
Yes.
you have to like bring it through and like get it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. It's an amazing thing. And it's like, I love that you brought that up because it's not always talked about, and it's not always said to like, not push through. Cause you know what I mean? Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
I
brilliant.
think as artists we're conditioned to it's always through the sort of unpeeling the onion is what I like to say. It's always the core of it, but how do we unpick how do we get to the root of what that middle
Right.
section is? And those layers can sometimes be honestly just the smallest action to get
Yeah.
there. So you know, we don't think of it at the time, but when we're feeling like we're in a rut or feeling crappy, those
Uh-huh.
are gifts that we're not aware of, because those can be really wonderful opportunities to create art from. And it sounds a little bit like, wah, wah, and buy my book for 19.95. It's not BS. It's really the truth,
Yeah.
because I
I
get it.
agree. Yeah.
I'm writing a one woman show right now, and it's around a situation that I've had that was not, it's been challenging. I had a pretty bad car accident last year. So I've been
Oh, I'm sorry.
affected by it in a way that
Uh-huh.
has been very, very challenging. And so consequently, I have been physically a little bit compromised, more than a little. I mean, I'm very lucky. But my point in this example is that I can feel physically I may be more limited, but it has been amazing to challenge myself to allow that opportunity for me to think, well, what can I create from this? And I
Mm,
wouldn't have been able to create material around it had the accident not happened, right?
yeah.
So any situation we're in, it's really just taking control of turning up your perceptions around that experience. And there's art all the time. Um,
Yeah.
and there's comedy all the time, even in the worst
Yeah.
things, right? So um, it's really just kind of opening up your perceptions to things and knowing, you know, there's really always going to be a silver lining, even in the times that you don't expect it. And there's always going to be a creative outcome when we don't expect it, if we really open our eyes to it.
Yeah, I love it's so true. Yeah, like I've experienced that myself, things in the time that feel like negative or bad or whatever. You can perceive that however like you can perceive it however you do. And then even further than that, you can create something beautiful from it. And that's like what you're doing with your one woman show or a lot of art. Yeah.
I think so many people, I mean, songwriters, I mean, I think if we didn't have pain, as we know, it's actually the greatest formula for creating, right? Because then we know think about it, when you want to tell your friends something, it's either usually something we're excited to buy or something that was really hard. There's no middle ground. And so,
That's so interesting,
right?
yeah.
So art comes from those high points and those low points. But the danger in stand-up, at least, is mediocre land, because there's indifference in mediocre land, and you can't dig your teeth in mediocre land. So, right? There's nothing, there's no passion around it. There's no point of view you can develop. So when I'm teaching people structure and teaching people process, I try to hone into exercises that really dive into what gets them going. Like what are our experiences that make a person excited to want to talk about? And that usually comes from the highs or the lows.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure you see that all the time then. I'm sure with students, with clients, when you kind of start getting them to figure out their own voice and like what they want to talk about, you probably hear a lot of like, it ends up being their highs or their lows, huh?
Yeah, because there's specific things that I ask when I'm coaching someone or teaching someone. There's nothing worse than when someone says, "Oh, you're a comic, so say something funny," or "You're an actor, so say, cry on the spot."
I know,
that's inorganic, right? So the trick is, when I'm working with people, is that I'm actually teaching ways that they're not aware that I'm trying to draw material out, because then it's coming out in an authentic way, right? So there are very specific activities that hone into that. So you're engaging in a way that doesn't feel like you're being a deer in headlights. Like, I have to say something funny. You don't. You just have to give a response to something that's a very simple question that inevitably opens up the door to share more around that thing. So it could be something you love, or something you're terrified of, or something that is driven by a larger response to it is likely to evoke a comfortability when you share, because you're not in the way of yourself when you do it that way. So like when I work with very shy people, or, even English as a second language, it's less about the words. It's finding what they want to share through the words that they want to talk about. Right. So, and then the humor comes from, whatever those feelings might be. I mean, whatever the topic might be, like you can talk about traffic, but if you're so angry about traffic, it can actually become funny because of how angry you are around it. Or you could say the alphabet. I always say this, you could say the alphabet, but if you say it terrified, or if you put a really strong POV that you're terrified or you're, super sad, it becomes funny. Right. So, any of our experiences can become funny if you really tap into your point of view on what you want to talk about.
Yes. Oh, I love that. So point of view, always. I see that perfectly makes sense, but you've articulated it in a way that, like, yes, that's true. I've noticed that, and point of view and truth. It has to start from truth, not like trying to be funny, not result oriented.
Never result oriented, because the thing is, it's like saying, anything in life, any kind of art, it's all your own opinion of it, right? So there's no factual thing. If I think something's funny, how do I know you're going to think it's funny? And we can't measure. I mean, this is my philosophy. As a comic, you can feel when something like, oh man, I didn't do well, or oh my God, I was in the zone. And that's not necessarily always based on the audience's reaction to you. That's based on how you feel when you deliver it, because the audience is going to change all the time. So the mistake I think people make as artists or comics is that you read the room to gauge whether or not something's landing, but your audience is going to change all the time. So it's got to be met by how you deliver it, right?
Yes, 1,000,000,000%. And that's the same, that's with acting 100% too. You feel like, nope, that wasn't it. Or like, that was it. It's very clear. You feel it.
You can feel it in your body. It's a rhythm. And, I teach stand-up at AMDA. I'm sure. So I've been, of course. I've been a sort of a guest faculty member for many, many years. And they have an artist lab that I was teaching stand-up, and still come usually once a year through a spring semester or whatever semester. And everybody there is either an actor or a singer or a dancer. But the same thing is that it's all around rhythm, and comedy is very rhythmic. And so as a dancer or an artist, a singer, anything, we can feel it when it's clicking. I always say it's like a Rubik's Cube. You can feel it when it's like,
Yeah. I love that.
And that's great, because when we feel we're in the zone, I say, when that's positive, it's just as powerful as when we're like, yeah, that's not landing. And that's our own rhythm that you start to really tap into, I think, with comedy, especially because comedy is very rhythmic. Yeah.
Yeah. So speak a little bit more about timing when it comes to comedy, because that's a known, very specific thing, like comedic timing. Would you say, number one, that can be taught? And number two, what is it exactly? Like, if you could even define it, it's because it's something that like everyone universally acknowledges it, oh, they have great timing, but I don't know like how I would ever teach someone that, it's like,
that's
you feel
a really
it.
great question. I mean, it really is. It's almost like, how do you teach someone to be on pitch as a singer versus someone who just naturally knows how to sing? I think there's training involved for sure to learning timing. But I believe, again, if you're tapped in to really listening to yourself, you can feel when you're already in a rhythm naturally anyway. And in comedy, there are formulas that can help you kind of encourage that rhythm. So in other words, comedy is notorious for, you want to deliver, it's always in 3 is a very magical number in comedy. 3 is kind of the magical number when you're creating content in stand-up per se, with rhythm, and comedy in terms of timing. So like, there's a premise, act out, punchline, premise, act out, punchline, or premise, 3 act outs, punchline. Again, based on the way I kind of look at it, but generally as a whole, 3 is the magical number, rhythm wise and timing wise, when you're creating stand-up. How you teach that is, again, everybody's system is different. I know that in mine, there's a really specific writing structure. So like my classes are 90% writing, so that you're learning, how to get the thoughts out, then cut the fat, then to really hone into the rhythm around it. And the reason why people will react half the time to a punchline that's funny is because it's so specifically written in terms of the rhythm behind it. Like, it's almost like, when you play a song and you find yourself singing whatever the kind of like the chorus line or whatever lyrics may be, because your brain memorizes that rhythm to it. You don't even know that you know the song. It's the same with stand-up. You're going to naturally have a larger response from an audience if you're very tight with the way you deliver it.
Yes, that is fascinating. So that's also has to do with practice with a certain piece.
100%. Yeah, you want to practice always from truth,
right?
But you want to cut the fat. I always say you want to cut the fat. So I'm a big believer in like getting everything out, and then you really hone in. Okay, what is it that I want to say here? What is the example I want to show here? And there are different ways of then enhancing the comedy component, like juxtaposition, opposition, characterization. So there are different ways to heighten those components that make something kind of showing the funny versus telling the funny. But teaching comedy and timing is really around a structure, at least that I work through as a comic, and also in how I teach it.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome. So what about like, if something is, how much do you experience where something is funny on the page, but when you put it up on its feet, suddenly, like, I don't know, like, it's not funny. I mean, is that common? Is that like, how do you work with that?
Yeah. I mean, I think what's common is that oftentimes you can't control what's going to happen, right? You can be as prepared as possible, but nowadays there are very strict rules with anybody who would be a heckler. As you know, you said you worked in a comedy club. Back in the dark ages, when I was here first, there was hecklers that would call out all the time.
Oh my gosh.
And so what I'm saying is, you can't control, if something's not going to land, you have to know that there are moments that you have to either play off that, or there are situations that you're not going to know
for sure.
How do I get out of this? Right. So I think you start to learn. I mean, it's always good to have a lot of confidence in, improvisation is always a great tool. It's always a great tool to have in your back pocket, but also is trusting that, your voice is going to get you through it no matter what. If you start to be insecure by your own self, it's going to lower your light even more.
Yeah,
so you have
so interesting that, huh?
Yeah, you're the conductor on there, right? So you're conducting how the audience is going to react to you, as far as I see it. I had one situation that's an example of this that might be helpful as far as kind of visualizing an example. many years ago, I was doing a set, and I was actually doing, I had a solid set, but then to the point of having something happen that you don't expect, this guy who was very drunk in the back called out. And in that moment, I was like, okay, now this is going from funny to, this isn't so funny. What do I do? Right. And thankfully, I trusted myself, and I just, in that moment, looked out to him, and I was like, Dad, come on. And everybody started laughing because clearly it wasn't my dad.
That's hilarious.
So you have to, and then, you reel it back in. It's really about
trusting yourself and like following your impulses.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes, because if things were known every moment we did them, it would be pretty boring.
It would be pretty boring, yeah.
Right? So we have to have confidence in going in for the ride, and feeling confident with what you have to say is going to help that ride be a smooth one.
Yeah. And like what's oftentimes exciting to watch are the things that are completely unplanned, or mistakes, or like the things that just happen, Everyone
it's just allowing. Like there's no perfect thing.
Yeah.
The mess ups are I think the mess ups are where the joy is.
Definitely.
There's no mistakes. I mean, I think people, it's like the deer in headlights, like, how do I be funny? You can't be funny. I always tell people, I'm not teaching how to be funny. I'm providing a platform to share who you are through comedy. That's different.
Yeah.
So
I love that distinction. Actually, that's a big thing. I'm not teaching you to be funny. I'm providing a platform for like yourself to come through. Like
Exactly. And I always say, I mean, listen, there are some people that have funny bones, just like some people can sing more easily than others, but we all love to laugh. So I call it's a universal language.
Yeah.
Like we all get along through laughter. So when people are like, oh, I'm not funny, I'm like, yeah, but if you like to laugh, chances are you're funny because you have a way of knowing reaction.
Yeah. And I think also similarly, like we're all storytellers. I mean, all of us, we've evolved that way.
If you have been born, you have comedy.
Yeah.
If you're living, there's comedy. I have a little slogan like find the funny in everyday life. It's everywhere around us. Again, it's just opening your eyes to it.
Yeah. And I love, and like, I've totally experienced that too. Like it's sometimes a choice to see things. Like things can happen in your day to day. You're like, oh, like irritating things, but you can actually in your mind, like see how funny it is and like laugh at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Because even in the moment, if we see something that's annoying, chances are, well, it's not even chances are, that annoying thing is a great vehicle to create something funny out of.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? So if you have a parking situation at Trader Joe's that really pissed you off, chances are you can build material around it because it pissed you off enough.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So, and it's so true. It's like, it's fun when you find those little discoveries where you're like, oh my gosh, that could be great material. It's just, we sometimes put a pressure on, well, how do I find the material? I'm like, it's around you every day.
Yes. It's more like, let it find you. Let the material find you. And just all you have to do is like grab it, put it down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's being very open to your perceptions.
Yes.
Because I mean, I break that down in the way I teach. It all comes from your perceptions, what you see, what you hear, what you taste, what you experience. It's all based on your point of view, and your point of view essentially is just what your opinions are.
Yeah. And like, truly, I think everything in life like that is like, that's a good approach for all of life,
It's true.
Yeah.
But I mean, even things that you don't realize you can make funny out of can be funny. And then you're like, wow, that was weird. I mean, this is a this is a weird example, but like I was walking my dog and I remember I was like, she happened to go to the bathroom on a church, like a church lawn. And in that moment, without even realizing it, and it's a little hacky, but I looked at it and I was like, holy shit. And I was like, holy shit. Oh my God, it's a holy shit because it was on a church lawn. So, I mean, again, it's a silly, that's a little like,
that's great. Cause it's like, it's like simple and the whole thing's there in like 2 words.
Yeah. Like you just, again, you can laugh at yourself when you just open your eyes to what's around you.
Yeah.
There was a dog. My old neighborhood had a dog that used to always be so friendly to say hello. And this dog happened to have the name Faith. And I remember the dog was licking me and was like, and I was saying, oh, how's your Faith? How's my little Faith? What's up, Faith? And I was like, oh, wait, there's something there. Like, I love my Faith. I love my Faith. I'm like, what? So, again, it's just giving yourself, it's lightening your own load to just live your life, but be open that there's stuff around you all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, definitely. It makes me like think of things too. I'm like thinking like years ago, I worked at a theater and I ended up like they had to they ended up letting me go. Like this is like years ago. But like I remember like the day I had gotten there to work that day like early to grab like the best desk in the corner. And I was the only one there. And then and there was this other guy there that I guess he was there as like a witness. And I had never met him before. And he's like, hi, I'm Zach. I'm like, hi, Zach. Nice to meet you. Like so friendly. And then they're like, oh, we just need to talk to you. And then as they're like talking and like just like explaining everything, my phone, it was like early. I hadn't turned my phone up. My phone's just ringing. It starts ringing in the back and I'm like, oh God. And I'm like realizing what they're saying. And my phone's just like ringing and I'm not anywhere near the best desk anymore. And it was just like, but in that moment, I was dying. Like I was just like so upset, like B, I felt so mortified. I couldn't believe any of it. Like, I'm like, and like I worked really like I don't know why it happened, like nothing. But afterwards, and that was it. I didn't even have to stay that day. And so I literally went there, experienced that, and left. And like afterwards, I was just like, oh my God, this is like hilarious. Like what? And I thought too, I thought it was like, I was a little bit earlier on the call, like on the sheet that day. So I was just like, so like, I don't know.
But see, what I love in hearing that too is I see, first of all, that is hysterical. And I love the joy that you're sharing. It's like the bottom line is you're laughing about something that in the moment was,
yes,
you said that you used the word mortifying.
Like it was horrible. Right? Like maybe that whole day, like it wasn't just like, I got over it so fast, but like when I think about it now, I'm like, oh my God, that was like hilarious,
That's exactly how you would find material. So when you say, how do you coach someone to kind of structure and work through the process? I would say, like if I said to you, name a time that was mortifying, you might be able to say, oh my God, this one time I wanted this desk, and you would tell that story, but it's based on that point of view, right? When we naturally tell anything through focusing on that point of view, you're not in the way of yourself because you're just letting that drive itself, right? So you're not like, but I have to say this because that's not funny. It doesn't matter. The funny is the outcome that comes. The first and foremost is that you got to tap into something that's going to have a strong point of view. So, any story that has a strong point of view can ultimately become funny is my point.
It's so interesting. It's so interesting because, I don't know, people like, it's cool how you can actually, because you can like have your mindset like this on a daily basis, where these things are kind of popping out at you, or like you're like reframing things that are, instead of like you can see the funny in everything. Like people are hilarious. Like if you just go to the grocery store and like watch people drive, even like road rage. Well, I know, like, what is that? How does that even make sense?
But see, that's great. So you just mentioned 3 things. So that's like a 5-minute set. So, again, because that's observational humor. So like, there's different ways. There are different techniques. Sorry, it's a little loud. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
There's like
I hear you. I don't hear the loudness, actually.
I'm like yelling over a garbage truck. I'm like, is that a symbol that there's like literally garbage being like thrown outside while I'm talking? I'm like, and there's comedy even in the garbage. No, but it's true. Like, everywhere. And people, listen, there's so much hard stuff in life. Yeah. It's so important to find the levity, right? But the levity, this is what people don't see, is that the comedy comes from the hard stuff. Yeah. We don't know it at the time. But again, you just told a story where in the moment you were mortified, but now in hindsight, it's funny, right? So there are ways that even in the moment, just like I have this kind of situation from my accident, I am constantly finding material.
Yeah.
Right? Because of the way maybe a doctor might talk to me, or maybe the way someone is reacting to me at the grocery store. Like you said, it's around us all the time.
Yeah.
It's really
It
around us all
really
the
is
time.
around us all the time. I love though that like it's all up to us, like our minds, how we choose to see anything, you know, and how we like interpret everything.
Yeah. And I think it's up to us to also know that, you know, again, stay away from the should.
Yes. I
Because I
love
think,
that.
and again, I don't want this to become like so psychoanalytical, but the reality is like there is so much such darkness in so many ways in the world. We're kind of, I think, getting into a lighter time. But, you know, back in the peak of the peak of the pandemic, and then all the riots and everything, it was glum.
Yeah.
I was like,
I
how do
know.
people find comedy? But there is, to be honest, there's actually comedy even in those glum moments,
Right.
because how did we deal with being in a pandemic? How do we deal with
Yeah.
getting out of the pandemic? Those are all based on our experience, but it is in the current and the real life versus the shoulds and the make-up life.
Yeah.
There's nothing, you can't dig your teeth into
Yeah,
that.
I love that.
You know?
Yeah, I totally do. Yeah, and like the pandemic, even just the fact that everyone's like planning their lives and stressing about all the things that we've always stressed about, and then the pandemic happens. It's just like such a reminder that you can't plan everything. You're not in control of everything, and yeah, like yeah. I mean, I know you know, yeah.
Yeah, no, but also that even, you know, as an artist, look at all the incredible things that could be built during that
Yeah.
time creatively. It's like sometimes when the world slows down, it's an opportunity for you to like to fasten up.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, I'm a big believer that you're kind of a reflection of, not to get so out there, but it's all energy, right?
Right.
So, you know, I'm not a big believer in telling anybody to, like we said before, just be where you're at. If you're
Mhm.
feeling low energy, tap into that low energy, but you might have a different outcome than, all right, I got to stop it, you know, because then you're in punish yourself land. And what's that going to do?
Yeah,
You know,
it really doesn't serve anything.
not really.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, Bo Burnham made that beautiful, I mean, he made an incredible show called Inside. I don't know if you saw it, but
Mhm.
he made that whole amazing show from being in the pandemic, from being in his apartment. And it was incredible artistry. And it was quite dark, some of the thoughts that he
Mhm.
shares in that, but they're very relatable
Yeah.
and they're very human. And I think it's about being willing to be vulnerable, to share your own voice, because chances are we all relate to it somehow.
Yeah, completely. And also another thing you just had in there is when you're very specific about your experience, like the specificity of that actually reaches more people than if you're generalizing about something or like glossing over something or yeah.
What you said is so true for comedy. Specificity is so important,
Mhm.
and that's half how you build rhythm. And you were
Okay.
asking earlier, which was such a poignant question about timing. Specificity helps you get timing. So if you talk about, I always say, specificity will help you get timing because it will help you get to your point of view faster. So in other words, there's nothing as funny about maybe not liking vegetables, but if you say how much you can't stand broccoli or asparagus, which is specific,
Oh, yeah.
you'll have a different outcome, right? So
Oh, that's
specificity is,
fascinating.
yeah, it's so important. You know, if you talk about cars, it's going to be different if you talk about a Porsche versus, you know, a Wagoneer.
Mhm.
Like anything with specifics is always going to create a different outcome as opposed to something generalized.
Yeah, and that also is very in line with being truthful because usually the truth is very specific, you know, like you have your point of view from a specific thing that happened, a specific car, a specific person, all of it.
All of it. All of it. I mean, next time you go to Trader Joe's, if you shop at Trader Joe's,
Yes.
do you Oh, girl, there is so much material there, because just do yourself a favor. And for anybody who's listening, whether you have a Trader Joe's, Ralph's, Vaughn's, wherever you go grocery shopping, I guarantee you when you go in and when you go back out, there's going to be a whole experience of things that you may have witnessed that you wouldn't have known could be funny.
Yeah.
Just trust me on that. Like whether it's someone you see, whether it's an interaction, whether or not people are fighting for the kale and no one really even eats it
Yeah.
anyway. You'd be surprised.
Yeah,
It's just,
definitely.
it's always around us.
Well, I've noticed, for instance, that Trader Joe's keeps they stopped making like all my favorite go-to things. So like yeah, I keep going there. Like when I go and I'll be looking for the
Hilarious.
same specific thing. And it's always out of stock. And then I'll ask, are they making it? Are they done with it? And sometimes they're like, yeah, we're not making that anymore, basically, but it's become like a trend. I don't know if I'm the only one buying some of these things.
Well, are you on TikTok?
It's on TikTok. They're talking about it.
Oh, girl. If you get anything that's on TikTok, I live very close to a Trader Joe's, and there's one person who's constantly like giving you kind of the go-tos at Trader Joe's, and it becomes viral, and then you can never get it.
Oh, that's what's going on.
Maybe. Because I can tell you some of them, I'm like, man, why don't they have the oat creamer or, or those curly crisps that girl on TikTok?
Yeah.
It's because I think it's like everybody starts to kind of go crazy. But I also think it's funny that, why we keep on going back for more. It's like a bad relationship, you're in a bad relationship with foods at Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
You keep going back for more when you know it's not good for you, It's a funny thing when we just, again, look at something that we wouldn't know is funny, but if you dive into that next layer of it, like that onion I was telling you about, there's a whole lot of stuff,
And I've definitely,
it could also, it could be like habits that we have. Like, why do we have bad habits, but yet why do we do these habits?
Yeah. And I know I've definitely also seen some customers asking for a specific thing. And I've watched like the employee respond how like, have this. And like some customers get like a little angry at the employee as if it has anything to do with him. They'll be like, well, when is it coming back? And I'm like, oh my God, like, it's just his job. He's not.
I know, but you know what, Jenna, this is the beauty with doing comedy or being an actor, because you can take that in and be like, little do you know, I'm doing you on stage.
Yeah.
Like in those moments, right? You can be, of course, knowing me, I'd be like, why are you doing that? I can't help it. But I get such gold when I see any interaction is such, it's like a golden ticket to doing on stage. And again, it's not to like, I don't say someone's name, but anytime
I know.
If you witness someone being like, if I've ever seen anybody be mean to like a valet or any sort of situation where there's anyone in service that's being spoken to in a way that's rude, the beauty is you can actually get so much joy out of speaking on it on stage,
and also bringing, and also maybe make like, maybe, we don't know what happens, but maybe bringing, the situations to light. And so people kind of also gain this new awareness, and they're like, if they're one of them, they're like, yeah, I did get that the other day. Like, why?
I'm attracted to stand-up, and I like to teach stand-up that's informative, so that you're actually, you're opening your eye to something that maybe you're saying, or maybe you're watching, but, Hannah Gatsby is a great example of that. Her one-person show is so informative, and it makes you think. Right. I like thought-provoking comedy because it's not just one note.
Yeah,
and any kind of artistry that's layered, I think, is where the real masterful artists are. Because then you can recognize, wait, do I do that? Or, oh, wow, I didn't know that. Or, you start to get reflective in your own thought and how you observe things,
Yeah. And
it's great.
Yeah. And I've noticed like with her also, there's structural things that sometimes accomplish so much. Like, because you'll be like, opened up, like as an audience member, you're open, you're kind of vulnerable. It feels like light. And then suddenly it'll like hit with something very serious, and it's like, it's just like incredible to structure something in a way that really earns the thing when it comes. Does that make sense? Like, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. I think that there's a poignancy that you can filter in something that is information that people should learn by when it is bookended with comedy.
Yeah, I love that.
So like I said, laughter is universal. It's a defenseless language. I always say that because people get along under that. But the real trick is using it as an entrance point and then dropping some serious informative information in the middle so that the takeaway is, oh, wow, I laughed from the beginning to end, but man, I learned something in the middle.
Yeah.
Right.
And definitely.
So
that's incredible.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to just ask you a few fun questions. All right.
Okay.
Okay. What's your horoscope sign and does that mean anything to you?
Ooh, that's a great question. That could be comedy. So I am a Scorpio.
Okay.
And the only thing it means to me is that every time I say I'm a Scorpio, with the exception of the reaction I just heard from you, chances are I usually hear, oh. And then I'm like, well, what does that mean? And then it depends on who's saying it. Because I've had guys in the past being like, oh. And I'm like, what does that mean?
I don't, like a thing,
but it's always usually a form of oh, like oh, or oh, I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So I think in the limited amount I know about astrology, but I believe in astrology in some ways. I don't follow it per se, but I'm sort of a believer of everything a little bit. Any basis on what they say Scorpio tendencies are, I'm a typical Scorpio.
Ah, interesting. Yeah.
From what I've read.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think Scorpio is like one of those signs that you always see memes about, you know? I don't know why either, but like something and then it's like he or she or theirs is Scorpio. And then I'm like, what? I don't know why.
Isn't it bizarre? Yeah. I know. It's what sign are you?
Taurus.
Okay. Do you ever get the same reaction? Like, oh, like it makes sense kind of thing?
Mix. I don't know. I don't feel like I have a reaction that I get consistently that like it's in my mind, you know? Sometimes I'd be like, oh, I could see that, but it's nothing like major. I don't know.
Yeah. No, mine's never a light response. Yeah. It's weird. It's always pretty extreme. It's one of the 3 O's, like, oh,
so funny.
Or oh, yeah. I'm like, it's never, oh, it's never a surprise. Like, oh, you are? Yeah. It's always around, oh, yeah, I could see that. I'm like, oh, great. What does that mean?
Yeah. People have a point of view about Scorpio. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I guess the takeaway is that, in a way, saying you're a Scorpio is almost like saying you're from a certain part of the world, because you'll get different responses based on who you're talking to. Like, it's like, it's just an interesting thing. It's never a point in the world that people don't know. It's not like that tiny town in Iowa. Everybody knows it. So it's like, oh, you're a Scorpio. Oh, how long have you been a Scorpio? Oh,
that's so funny.
Did you live as a Scorpio for a long time? It's that whole like, so.
I want to ask you about your experience as a Scorpio. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And then this podcast is called Behind the Now, but I always like to ask, how do you be the now? So that's up to your interpretation. Like, how do you be present if it's something you consciously do or maybe not consciously do?
I think being present is a little, for someone like me whose mind goes a million directions a second, I'd be the first to say it. It's been a challenge to know, how do we get in the now? So I have to sort of do things that are around the exact moment of doing them. In other words, going for a walk before the light is down, or, doing something in that moment keeps me in the now. Yeah. My tendency is to want to think in the what if land and the forward thinking, and that takes you away from the now. I think it's just about really, finding ways to meditate, finding activities that you can do to kind of slow that what if down the road process. Honing into reeling things in a slower way. Yeah. So just dialing it back a little bit. Slowing the mind, I think, encourages being in the now. Lowering anxiety, trying to figure out your surroundings in a way that keep you in a safe, calm space, because the now is never going to be the now even a second later. Yeah. And it's such a present to be in the now, right? It's such a gift we never want to take advantage of.
100%. I love talking with you.
Me too. It's been such a pleasure. My goodness, I'm so grateful. And thank you so much for everything you're doing to enlighten and, share with the world your incredible work and hear from other artists. It's so inspiring on so many levels. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've loved this. And you've said so many beautiful words of wisdom, truly. Where can our listeners find you? Or if they want to take your class, give out your information.
Thank you. I will plug the Scorpio, Susanna. So if you are an adult, you can learn about my coachings or my classes through SusannaSpies.com. I have a name. It's easier to spell. It sounds nothing like the spelling. It's SUSANNASP as in Peter, IES.com. Those are my adult sessions that I have both on Zoom, and I do coachings on Zoom as well. Then if you are a teen from the ages of 10 to 19, I have a company called Comedy Playground, and students, preteen and teen, they learn sketch, improv, and stand-up, and then they culminate in a show at the Improv. So if you have a teen who's interested in learning, we teach those on Sundays in Burbank with a culminating show out of the Hollywood Improv. And those that can be found at comedyplayground.com. And if you want to come to a show, by the way, we have our youth show at the Hollywood Lab on February 26th. You can email me and I'll bring you in as a guest and we'll have some fun. So
yes, amazing.
Feel free to reach out.
That's so cool. And it's so cool. The show's at the Improv. That's amazing.
Yeah. We've been there for a long time and we're very grateful. We have the classes out of Burbank and then we culminate there. And, so exciting to have the kids, look at the wall and see who's performed there and know that they have that opportunity is very exciting. So that's been there we've been there since 2002 or 2003. So, we've been very fortunate to have our showcases there and just again, celebrate the funnies together, all of us in whatever way that you can. It's out there.